gave us all sorts of new household terms. You could probably include essential service in that list if you already haven't already. It's actually already, though, been in the public domain lexicon. For example, it differentiates police and fire from other priorities that are deemed kind of less essential. However, last legislative session, Idaho lawmakers made a pitch to add another service to that essential list. They want to include emergency medical services. Senate Concurrent Resolution 101 says Idaho's EMS workers are under added pressures, and they have a growing population to take care of, and of course the costs are skyrocketing. Resolution asks Idaho Department of Health and Welfare to identify problems across the state and bring legislation next session to fix those problems. Health and Welfare has since been working with all 44 counties to learn about those problems, the service gaps, the needs. You can add whatever you want to that, which you can imagine looks differently depending where you look. Andrew Bartline gives us a glimpse of how it is handled in one rural community.
It's kind of a mixed bag.
Mostly agriculture, a lot of open space out here.
Few call it home.
About 5,000 people, not a big place. That's Lincoln County in a nutshell.
All accompanied by what seems like the appropriate infrastructure.
Because there's one red light.
Due to factors out of their control, people are kept in line. But in this line of work, there's no time for that.
People don't realize they need us until they need us. So
Corey Krause is an EMT based in Shoshone.
it's satisfying, you know. You see people out that you helped out in the community and they say, hey, thank you for saving, my life, or hey, thank you for coming out and listening.
But sometimes they're the ones that need to be heard.
Right.
Mark Essery's the director.
On a state level, there's not dedicated money to ensure that EMS services exist either statewide or in a county.
Local hospitals or private companies can take up the service. Lincoln County doesn't have either.
As an example, the county subsidizes us about $100,000 every year just to keep the ambulance service going.
If you were a private entity, would you create a business like this in this area?
Would I do it in hopes to make money? Not a wise move.
So then whose responsibility is it to make ends meet so services exist in remote areas?
It's a good question. We could always pass the buck, right?
If there's even a buck to pass in the first place.
I'm kind of a training ground, and I understand that. Our starting wages for EMTs is not much, less than $11 an hour, believe it or not. Our advanced EMTs make a little more than that, $16 or $17 an hour.
Salary actually takes up a majority of their budget, leaving the equipment as an afterthought.
None newer than 2012. I've got to start thinking about replacing these things.
Which costs money
Hook people up to.
they don't have.
This is the only ambulance in service right now for this entire county. Now, running 2 calls a day, that's about right. But we get that third call, one of my folks in Richfield will leave their job to go get on an ambulance.
A volunteer.
To respond to the call.
And that happens.
And that happens.
A mixed bag where it gets far worse.
Right.
Wayne Denny works at the state EMS Bureau.
Yep.
And he's the chief.
There are a number of EMS agencies in the state that get by year to year on bake sales. I mean, they literally don't have the budget to keep diesel in the ambulance.
His job is to find solutions to create sustainable statewide systems. And he's already looking at step 1.
A cost share where the state helps offset the costs that the counties are bearing.
Because a lot of costs often come from outside the county.
93 and 75 are pretty dangerous because people like to speed on it. And people think just because they're straightaways they're NASCAR drivers.
It's left Lincoln County taxpayers funding EMS services for others.
The EMS coverage for the highway, interstate, whatever that runs through, you start to get to the point where it's like they can't do it. It's not possible.
There's a lot of nuance in the problems you face.
There are.
Just not enough to get too mixed up. Not yet.
It's just going to get spread thinner and thinner and thinner until either a service has to shut down, people get hurt and don't get timely care, you name it.
Mark says he's not for writing blank checks. If future legislation offers dollars to ensure EMT services across the state, like we do with police and fire, well, then he expects Lincoln County or anyone else benefiting to be held accountable for using those dollars correctly. And that concurrent resolution, Brian, is asking for that exactly, saying health and welfare, come to us, give us some answers. And that bureau has, been working on this for the last couple of years, trying to find information. But in that 2024 session, they're expected to come with some sort of a solution.
I know we've known about this for a couple of years. We've talked about it a couple times before. It's just crazy, though, that paramedics, emergency medical services are not included in the same umbrella of essential emergency services.
And responding to the same calls often,
Right.
police, fire, and ambulance, they may all show up to the same call all at once. 2 of those 3 are considered essential. The state promises you these will exist in your community. EMS services are not the case.
All right, we'll see if lawmakers can come forward with something productive this next legislative session. Thank you, Andrew.